=script_start=. They thought they could just walk into the Chase Center and dictate the terms of engagement. They thought the expansion team would collapse the moment the bright lights turned on and the pressure mounted. But something entirely different happened on that floor, and it completely shattered the script everyone had written for this game. What looked like a standard matchup quickly devolved into an absolute masterclass of defensive intensity and transition execution that left the opposition utterly scrambled. And the wildest part, this goes way deeper than anyone realizes, exposing a fundamental shift in how this team is learning to win. Everyone expected a back-and-forth battle between established star power and a young, hungry roster trying to find its identity under immense pressure. Instead, what the crowd witnessed was a tactical suffocating of an offense that usually thrives on rhythm and space. By the time the final buzzer echoed through the arena, a definitive statement had been made, and the rest of the league needs to start paying serious attention. To understand how this demolition unfolded, you have to look at the opening possessions, where the tone was violently set at the rim. Reese Stokes stepped up for the opening tip, but it was Ryan Howard who immediately asserted herself by hunting her spots with lethal precision. Howard leads her squad in long-range shooting when she gets hot, and she wasted absolutely no time proving why, pulling up from the foul line for a crisp one-footed jumper that hit nothing but net. That opening salvo was a direct warning, but the opposition refused to heed it, trying to force their way into the paint only to find a wall of defenders waiting for them. When Alicia Gray attempted to answer by crossing over and attacking the heart of the defense, she managed to finish through heavy contact to draw a massive and one opportunity. That sequence gave her squad a brief flash of momentum, a sign that they were ready to punch back in an environment that was growing more hostile by the minute. But individual brilliance can only carry a team so far when the collective unit is firing on all cylinders. Every single time the offense tried to string together consecutive baskets, they were met with a disciplined rotating defensive scheme that forced them deep into the shot clock. Remember this detail, because it becomes absolutely crucial later as the game started to slip away from them. Kayla Thornton began turning the corner with just 5 seconds left on the timer, calmly pulling up at the charity stripe to knock down a cold-blooded bucket. That was not a fluke outcome, as the coaching staff had spent the entire morning shoot-around specifically working on playing the gaps and avoiding overhelps on the drive. It was a calculated defensive strategy executed to absolute perfection, forcing tough, contested mid-range looks while completely eliminating the easy paint touches they desperately wanted. And this is where the story takes a turn nobody expected, as the bench depth began to absolutely paralyze the opposition's game plan. Jordan Canada entered the game and immediately injected a furious level of energy, snaking through screens and putting her teammates in the absolute best positions to succeed. At the center of this storm was head coach Natalie Nakase, a notorious players coach who excels at getting an entire roster to buy into a single cohesive defensive vision. With 33 career wins under her belt, Nakase orchestrated a rotating defensive wheel that kept fresh bodies constantly hounding the ball handlers. But you have to ask yourself how an offense is supposed to survive when a literal Olympic-level disruptor decides to completely take over the floor. Gabby Williams entered the lane, stopped on a dime, spun back the other way and knocked down a devastating turnaround jumper that left her defender reaching at air. Williams is widely recognized as one of the premier two-way forces in basketball, a player whose defensive impact completely alters the geometry of the court. When she wasn't locking down the perimeter, she was hunting her own offensive spots, dropping 9 quick points and tracking down an incredible transition block from behind. Now here's the part that should make you angry if you appreciate disciplined basketball. Because the offensive execution from the opposing side completely fell apart under the weight of this pressure. They became highly reactive on their defensive rotations, leaving shooters wide open on the perimeter, while failing to secure basic defensive rebounds. After an absolute brick from deep, the ball was tracked down by Lauren Cox, who gift-wrapped an easy interior bucket that forced an immediate frustrated timeout from the opposing bench. They desperately needed an offensive spark, a coherent set or anything to stop the bleeding, but the answers simply were not there. Instead of a measured response, the game turned into a chaotic sequence of bad passes and transition turnovers that fueled the building avalanche. Ryan Howard attempted to push the pace but completely misread a glaring mismatch in the paint, where Kayla Thornton was waiting. The resulting turnover led to a brilliant one-handed catch and scoop by Medina Okot, who converted the transition bucket plus the foul. Moments later, Williams completely rejected an inside attempt from Cox, triggering a fast break that ended with Thornton burying a devastating three-pointer from the wing. And this is where it gets personal, because the sheer dominance on the boards completely erased any hope of a secondary comeback. Angel Reese began asserting herself in the paint, battling through multiple jerseys to secure crucial offensive rebounds and putting them back up and in for extra possessions. Reese has this relentless assertive nature off the drive where she simply refuses to be outworked or intimidated by veteran presence. Even when Howard blocked an interior shot with elite closing speed, Reese was right there to vacuum up the miss, flexing her muscle and talking a little trash to the opposing front court. Think about the psychological toll that takes on a team over the course of 4 intense quarters of basketball. Every time they managed to force a difficult miss, they were completely demoralized by a second-chance bucket or a transition leak-out. Gabby Williams put her head down, blew past her primary defender, and pushed her personal tally to 16 points with an array of crisp finishes. When the defense tried to over-adjust by collapsing 3 players into the paint, Williams simply zipped a pass out to the corner where a wide-open teammate buried another dagger. Now compare that to the complete structural collapse of the opposing offense, which was left searching for answers that did not exist. They were shooting an abysmal percentage from the floor, and things grew significantly worse when Alysha Gray was glued to the bench during critical stretches. Without her scoring punch, the entire offense became entirely predictable, resulting in desperate late-clock heaves that rarely found the mark. Meanwhile, Madonna Okot was absolutely rolling on the other end, catching brilliant feeds from the perimeter and converting tough contested layups over collapsing defenders. Because here's what this all means going forward for a league that thought this expansion franchise would take years to become a legitimate threat. This group is already playing with the chemistry and defensive discipline of a seasoned playoff contender. And they are doing it on a nightly basis. When you have role players coming off the bench to provide that elite level of energy, knocking down 53-pointers as a collective unit, you become an absolute nightmare to game plan against. They aren't just winning games, they are actively dismantling the spirits of established teams who underestimate their depth. As the final seconds wound down, the Chase Center crowd rose to their feet, creating a deafening wall of sound that let everyone know exactly who owns this floor. Another home victory was officially secured, marking their 8th win of the season in a dominant fashion that will reverberate through the standings. They tried to tell this team to be patient, to wait their turn, and to suffer through the typical growing pains of an expansion year. But patience was clearly never a part of their DNA, and the rest of the league is about to pay a massive price for underestimating them. =SPREPEAT _END =.